I'm sick of these ads. Which of us watching TV, listening to the radio or just driving through the streets of the city did not come up with this angry thought? Unfortunately, there is nothing to be done here. It is a one-way road. From a glowing flat-screen box, from loudspeakers in the subway and from the pages of glossy magazines, advertising daily hammers directly into our brain, turning it into a burning jungle of the Vietnam War. Have you ever thought about the fact that advertising is not only a way to promote goods and services, but also a kind of tax that all consumers pay? They pay with their time, which they have to spend on advertising where there is no way to refuse it. This tax is especially hard on those who cannot avoid it, poor and technically illiterate people. Advertising is everywhere. If the advertising were telling the truth, everyone would already be walking around with snow-white teeth and beautiful hair, and the purest and most delicate and perfect skin from the advertised creams. All this is a complete lie. Ads about toothpastes, skin-improving creams and shampoos in particular, which thicken and strengthen hair. If dandruff is falling, then the body needs it. For some reason it gets rid of it, and some kind of advertised shampoo turns it off. If we sweat under our armpits, then the body needs it, and some kind of gel turns it off. Nothing personal, just business. If we get rid of acne, eczema, dandruff, sweat, armpits with the help of ointments and shampoos, the body will have even bigger problems. There will be poisoning of the body and it will shoot somewhere else 100%. Do not go to the fortune teller's grandmother. Advertising communication, which literally follows on the heels of the truth, which is not 100% true, has filled the entire information space today. Such marketing communication, which causes a person to have an incorrect or completely false idea of what has been said, is one of the most destructive, but so attractive and tempting for a marketer. In order to lie, you do not need to lie openly, asserting a position. You can lie covertly and more effectively. Marketers are well aware that the processing of information in a person's head does not end with the last frames, the last words of advertising heard. Information processing continues in a person's head by building conclusions and independently formulating final conclusions. How is information analyzed? A conclusion is formulated from what is seen and heard. Research by psychologists has led to the conclusion that people perceive from a message not only obvious information, consciously presented, but also what information can mean in addition to the obvious. In common practice, there are concepts of a direct statement about something and a hint of something. In marketing, in relation to advertising, the consumer can be made to believe in such qualities of the product, which are not directly mentioned in the advertisement. A hint in a message, or a series of hints arranged according to a certain pattern of communication, is enough, and the human brain will formulate a conclusion on its own. At the same time, the conclusion is thought out by a person, but is not an obvious result of what was reported. This tendency of people to draw conclusions, to create psychological schemes based on the knowledge gained, is a natural component of the information processing process by the brain. Marketing information arranged in a special way and vivid advertising images and slogans encourage the buyer to draw conclusions from the information provided to him in such a way that not only information is deposited in his mind, but also an interpretation is formed that will be more vivid and important for the buyer. But the trust in advertising is constantly falling, and the consumption of advertised services and goods is constantly growing. The fact is that marketers are becoming more cunning, and psychological tricks are becoming more technological. New schemes of enrichment in advertising are almost always a deception and a trap. If this is not an informative advertisement from well-known banks about new tariff rates, then it is necessary to turn on the brain and remember how many people have suffered from pyramids, forex, grey schemes and loans. Of course, most often it's not the advertising that's to blame, but the dishonest product. But it's like separating a bullet and a gun. What difference does it make what punctured your knee? We live in an era of information abundance, but also information noise. Everywhere we look, we see ads. On the streets, in transport, on the internet, on TV, in magazines, on the radio. Advertising penetrates into our consciousness and subconsciousness, forms our needs, tastes, preferences, and values. Advertisers know how to influence our emotions, fears, and desires. They use different techniques: repetition, contrast, associations, authorities, social proof, hidden signals, and so on. They intentionally create images of ideal products that promise us happiness, success, health, beauty, and all the things we want so much. But you understand that advertising is not free. Advertisers, manufacturers, and sellers of goods and services pay for it, and they, in turn, shift these costs to end users. Thus, part of the price of any product or service is the cost of advertising. Advertising is similar to tax in several ways. It is mandatory for all consumers. We cannot refuse to purchase goods or services with or without advertising. We can't choose which ads to watch or listen to. We cannot control the quantity and quality of advertising. It is charged for the purpose of financing expenses. Advertisers spend money on advertising in order to increase their sales and profits. This is their commercial interest. But these costs are borne by consumers who pay for advertising along with the product or service. It does not depend on the income of consumers. Advertising is equally dear to everyone. It doesn't matter how much you earn or how much money you have. You pay for advertising the same way as other people, rich or poor. This makes advertising a regressive tax that falls harder on the poor. Advertising is a tax on poverty and illiteracy, but not all consumers are equally affected by advertising. There are categories of people who are more vulnerable to advertising messages. These are poor and technically illiterate people. Poor people are those who have low incomes, live in disadvantaged areas, and do not have access to quality education, healthcare, and culture. They often lack resources, time, energy, and self-esteem. Such people are more easily susceptible to illusions and deception. They are more prone to impulsive purchases, addictions, and risky behavior. Advertising exploits these weaknesses. She promises poor people easy and quick solutions to their problems. She manipulates their feelings of guilt, shame, envy, fear. It creates artificial needs and desires. She forces them to spend money on things that they don't need or are harmful to them. Technically illiterate people are those who do not know how or do not want to use modern technologies such as computers, the internet, and smartphones. They do not know how to protect their personal information, how to distinguish truth from lies, how to filter and analyze information. They don't understand how advertising works in the digital space. Advertising exploits this flaw. It penetrates into the personal sphere of technically illiterate people through various channels: email, social networks, messengers, websites. It tracks their interests, behavior, and location. It adapts to their preferences and shows them personalized ads. Advertising is not only a tax on poverty and illiteracy, but also a threat to freedom of choice and personal development. Advertising forms mass consciousness, standardizes tastes and values, and suppresses critical thinking. How can I protect myself from manipulative advertising? There are several ways. The first, education. The more we know about how advertising works, what techniques it uses, and what goals it pursues, the better we can analyze its messages and make informed decisions. Second, technologies. The better we are able to use modern technologies, the more we can control our access to information alternatives. The more we search for and use alternative sources of information, the less we depend on advertising channels. We can read independent media, subscribe to bloggers, listen to podcasts, watch documentaries. Third, activism. The more we participate in public life, the more we can influence advertising policy and legislation. We can sign petitions, participate in actions, contact the authorities, and defend our rights. These ways can help us become more aware and free consumers of information. When you remember that miracles do not happen, it becomes much easier to notice advertising tricks. Turn on your brain so as not to be deceived. Use common sense. But after making a difficult decision about choosing yogurt in the store, remember that your brain has already made this decision a few seconds before the start of the thought process. Advertising works regardless of what you think about it and how you watch it. Good luck.